it's Coach Tori, and this is Raising Runners. We talk running, fitness, mental health, and so many more topics. As the founder of a youth running program, I approach all of our conversations with our youth athletes in mind and kind of have a focus around those things. But as you will see, we are finding that all of these topics relate to runners and people who like to move and do fitness or anything like that. Relates to everybody. Check it out. In today's episode, I get to talk with Coach Dan all about running, which, as you know, I love to talk running with anybody who's willing to talk with me about it. So that is super fun. I will say this episode is so great, such a fun conversation, but was a pain in my butt to get to happen. Well, actually, the recording happened, and then for some reason, the file, I'm looking at it on the computer, will not turn into a podcast. Had all these issues with that. Then finally got that working. Luckily, Dan has been so patient about the episode coming out. So finally got it working, finally got it in a podcast. And then this week when I try to record an intro and an outro, they also go missing. So I don't know what it is with technology, but we are finally here. We have the episode. Who knows what I talked about in my last recording of the intro, but super great conversation with Dan. He talks about his running. He talks about coaching people. He talks about being able to coach people to enjoy running and run pain-free from the beginning. He has a really great approach to working with beginner runners that I think is probably super successful for everyone that works with him. So that's really awesome. So yeah, we just talk a lot about running, and we also are going to be chatting later this week. So if you have any questions you would like me to ask Dan, please either email them to me or put that, for Spotify listeners, you can put them in our question and answer box. But enjoy the episode.
Sure. Hey, so I'm Dan Bryan. The people I coach call me Coach Dan. And I'm geared mainly towards helping people who've never run before and teaching them that they can actually run a 5K. I like to say I have a little slogan that says, I'll teach you to run pain-free from day one. And there's about 3 keys to that. It sounds like secrets or magic, but it's not. But it does work. And then so it's been pretty exciting. That's really exciting for me, just to help people who've never run before, because they walk away with more than a finisher's medal. They walk away with a lot of other things. So I always talk about enjoying the journey and just applying it to winning at the marathon of life. So we get more than a finisher's medal when we're done. Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Well, and I love that. And even in our first emails, and I saw that you had said, I help people run pain-free from day one. I was like, I'm sure there's some kind of secret or something to that. And I need to hear it if you're willing to share. Can you talk a little bit about that before we get into all of the other stuff?
Sure can. So it's a little bit of a story, give you a little background. I've been a runner since high school. I didn't know what I was doing. I had a friend who was quite a big guy. And I thought, man, if he can run, I should be able to as well. And so I asked him to teach me, and he took me out on the track after school, and he was working me up to 3 miles. And I remember it was so painful. I remember after I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks, I was up to 2 miles, but that was 8 times around the quarter-mile track, right? And it was just so mental, because I was like, oh my gosh, how far have I gone? How many more do I got to do? And then one day I think he saw it. And again, we were high school guys. We didn't know what we were doing. And he said, let's just go run in the neighborhood. And we lived in an area with kind of rural, so a lot of back roads. And we ran and talked, and then we got back, did a big loop back to the school, and then we went and drove it. And it was 5 miles. And up to that point, I'd only done 2. And we had stopped once. And I, started chewing on what happened. And I realized a few things had happened there. And then I share those with folks now. And one of those is a running buddy, someone who can keep you accountable. But it's just amazing too. If you have someone to talk to and someone to share that that the training with or the runs with, it makes a big difference on your outlook and keeps you positive, keeps your minds off the road. And so that's a benefit. The second one I like to talk about is running isn't cheat, or walking isn't cheating. And I think a lot of people approach like, oh, if I'm going to go learn to run a 5K, then when I step out the door and I start jogging, if I stop at any time during my training run, I have failed. And so it becomes very mental. And I think it's more like a boxing match. You approach running as something to survive. So, you're like always focused on how much time you have until you can stop. Where's the finish line? And instead, if you embrace walking isn't cheating, it frees you up. And so all of a sudden, you just have a different, viewpoint about running and a different way to look at it. And what I find is interesting too is people actually go farther once they're freed up to actually walk. So now you're permitting people to walk, but they actually seem to go farther. And I think a part of it is just that, hey, at any point I want to, I can stop and walk for 30 seconds. And then again, that seems to be more positive, and people will continue to, keep moving farther before they start walking. And then the third one is run at a conversational pace, and that's pacing. And I find with beginners, you start using words like pacing and stride and footfall, and their eyes will roll. So I just tell them, I want you, when you start jogging, to just maintain a pace where you can continue to carry on a conversation. And if you're having to struggle to go for gas breaths in between your words, then you're too fast. And I seriously want you to slow down. And it may just be a little faster than a walk, but it's a pace where you can, jog or shuffle, where you're able to continue that conversation. And that's a big change for people too. And then those are the big three. And then the other ones is for beginners, I only have them go like 15, 20 seconds before I have them walk for a couple minutes. And so, you say, hey, we're going to go for 20 minutes. And they go, oh my gosh, they start sweating. But I'm like, we're going to do it. And, we're going to do 15 seconds of jogging. We're going to do a couple minutes of just walking. And then we're going to repeat it until we hit 20 minutes. And they get done with that. And they find out like, wow, that wasn't so bad. That was doable. And those nightmares they had back in high school when they had to run that mile in high school, and the coach gave no training or tips, and that was just miserable, and they were just trying not to be last. Those things kind of go away, and they start to see it as something they can do and actually start to enjoy. And of course, if you're talking with somebody, now you can learn to pace. And then, of course, it all kind of rolls together. The whole buddy running a conversation will then have a buddy to be able to do that. And then they help keep the right pace because you're carrying on a conversation. And usually a couple good things when I step out the door with a new group is before I've broken them into eventually they kind of find a buddy to work with during the week. But we would do a run on Saturday as a group, and then they'd have their what I call maintenance runs during the week on their own. And then with a buddy. But on Saturday when we start, what do you talk about? Well, your last vacation is always a good one. What'd you do? Where'd you go? Or what'd you do for the holidays is a good one. Or of course, what series are you watching now? And that gets people, all jibber jabbing and talking back and forth and stuff. So those have been quite successful for us, just to get people who have never thought they would ever be a runner to embrace it, find it's not painful, find it is doable, and the rate at which it increases is, they're doing more each week, and they look back and they go, wow, I can't believe that, I'm running straight now for a couple minutes before I walk a little bit or whatever. And then before they know it, 8 to 12 weeks later, they're running a 5K. So, and that's always fun, right? Because you get the blame, you get the medal, you get all the energy from the people around you during the race. And so those are always really enjoyable.
Yeah. No, your group sounds so fun. And I imagine like everybody there
really enjoys everything you're doing. And I know you said you started all of this idea from like thinking back on when you first started running and how it felt so hard, but it seems like you really focus on the mental side of running, which really changes it for people, right? Um, was that just like personal experience? Like you're just like, I know like if my head's in the
Yeah.
game in my head, like I feel good, then it works? Or like, is there anything else that played into you kind of figuring out like these are where people's heads needs to be? This is how I can like help foster, this love for running for everybody.
So a lot of it, you hit it on the nail on the head. I think a lot of it was kind of the mental. It definitely was, my key looking back in high school was when we went and ran 5 miles, and up to that point I could only run two. It was because we got off the track and I was no longer focused, like myopic, on like how long do I have to go? How many more times around this track do I have to go? All that was kind of gone. So definitely mindset had a lot to do with it. Plus, we were talking and I enjoyed the conversation, so that made a difference. Um, the but I think for me a lot of it was self-taught, and that was a lot of it. And then I went into we lived one time later on after high school, got married. Then I was in the military, so we had to do the 1.5 miles every 6 months, and so that was so running became kind of just something we had to do at least a little bit. But I really started to like it about my mid-20s, and I signed up for a marathon training class, and we lived in Hawaii at the time, and I thought, well, I can run a 5K, but we're talking enough distance now where I have to be able to fuel while I'm running. I have to have some kind of, fuel to keep me going. And there was a lot of other factors at that distance. So I signed up for a class to help me. And I turned around, I saw my wife was signing up. And that was a shocker because um, I had got I had deployed on a ship for 6 months to the Middle East, and 2 weeks before I left, my daughter was born. So I came back. My daughter's like 6.5 months old, which was kind of a shock, right? And I knew it, but then to see her, go from 2 weeks to 6.5 months, it was something else. But what I hadn't realized till I got home was my wife's hip. She had trouble. It had kind of gone out of socket some during birth, and it had never really come back in. And so when I got home, we would go to a movie or something like that, find a babysitter for the kids, and she'd walk a couple blocks and have to take a break. And I was thinking, wow, this is kind of life changing for us. And she is a personal trainer and a yoga instructor and Group X. And so I was like, wow, this is a big change for her too, just in her, profession. And what's this mean for us as a family? So all that's kind of going through my head. And then, the following week, I'm signing up for a marathon. I turn around and she's signing up. And there's a good lesson here, a good lesson that I had to learn. But I was like thinking to myself, what is she doing? And she can't walk 2 blocks and she's signing up for a marathon. But what was interesting was she started doing that program, and she had never run miles. She'd done a lot of the yoga, like I said, in the group exercise, but was not a runner. And she found that the running was just different enough from the walking that it just tightened up and pulled everything back in, and she went on to run that marathon with me. We ran it together. And that was kind of a story in itself too, because speaking about, kind of, how you stay with it and how you start to enjoy it. She was, they broke us into groups based upon kind of our pace. And she found herself faster than the walkers, but slower than the last running group, just in terms of pace. And so she woke up one morning, we wake up like at 5. And most running groups don't do that. I don't want to scare off your listeners, but in this case, we woke up at 5 for this training. We went downtown to Honolulu. We'd start running at around 6 or so, and then we'd finish around 9 o'clock or something like that. But she woke up one morning at 5, which is always tough, and she said, "If you don't run with me, I'm not running." And I was like, "Okay, I'll run with you." And so what it became unexpectedly was this great date. So for about 4 months, we had a date every Saturday morning. And that was some of the best time we had, because we were running together and we would just talk about everything. And so that turned out to be fabulous for our relationship. And then we, of course, went on to run the marathon together. So that was just a great story for what running can do, for your body. And then it was, a good lesson for me to remember that, anything's possible, and then we talk about that all the time to people, that just this relationship that we had that got stronger just through sharing runs together. So it did really heighten my enjoyment for running. In fact, I would do, after that, I do most of my running alone. We did run that marathon alone, but then I went on and started doing ultra runs, and I would do a lot of my running by myself. And think about, what was it here? I don't know, about 2016 or so. She kind of saw I was a little burned out, and I think it was because I was running alone. And she was the one who said, "Hey, why don't you teach these folks to run at the gym? There's a fun run coming up, and they want somebody to coach them. And would you volunteer?" And I said, "Sure, I'll teach people to run a 5K." But what was funny was, I thought running was intuitive. It's funny. I think back to high school and realize there was a lot of stuff that wasn't intuitive. But I guess it didn't really. It was buried pretty deep. It wasn't until I started coaching I started kind of revisiting and pulling all that back up. But when I started with a class, I would tell them things, and I would find they would be surprised by that. And I thought, isn't that obvious? It's kind of intuitive. And then they all did it. There's about 15 of them. They all did the 5K. They were all so excited. And I remember at the end, they were thanking me and so appreciative. And I honestly thought they were just being super nice because I was the coach, and just pat me on the back. And so then the second year, the gym asked me back to do the same thing again. I said, "Okay, sure, I'll do it again." And I had the same reaction from those students, which is like, "Wow, I never thought I could do this. Man, that little thing just made such a difference for me on how to think about walking, or to have someone to be with, or to how to manage my pace. Just remember to be able to talk." And so then I was a little thick, but finally it started getting through my head that, I guess I got something to share with people, that this stuff isn't as intuitive as I thought it was. And just like many disciplines, things have to be taught and learned. So that was a kind of a big breakthrough for me. And then I thought, well, I like this. I knew I've been a teacher, just enjoy that in any field. And I taught at the Italian Naval Academy. I've had quite a few exciting experiences. So I thought, well, why don't I get the license or the accreditation to be a running coach? So I'm a certified running coach now. And then it just kind of grew from there. And we put out this year a book called Running for the Rest of Us. And it really does focus on people who are not, professional runners, or, people who go and get a scholarship at a college. It's really for the folks that think they can't do it. And that it's a book just designed to help folks who, think running is never going to be in their life, and try to encourage them to add it to their bucket list, and then be able to start a 5K plan, and 8 to 12 weeks later, line it up to a fun run somewhere, start 8 to 12 weeks before that. They have some options, whether they want to walk it, because I always say walking counts, is where we all start, or whether they want to jog or whether they want to run. And I think it depends on their age and just their ability, and they're athletic. Some people aren't runners, but they're very active. Other people sitting on the couch. So it just has a lot of different levels to try to fit and allow people to just find what's going to fit for them. And then they can just start that journey. And before they know it, they'll be ready. So that was the genesis behind the book. And the focus really was on folks who haven't run before.
I was going to say, I have your book pulled up right now, and I was going to ask you, okay, so like, who is this for? Even though it seems very obvious, right? Running for the rest of us, which is basically all of us, right?
Yeah.
And I imagine, with this book, you are, speaking obviously generally, but, and I don't know if you get like a mix of people in your group runs and stuff. I imagine eventually they all kind of filter through, like everyone with a similar kind of goals and mindset. But how do you accommodate for people with like different goals or different ways of learning? Like you mentioned, obviously, like you've always been someone who likes to teach, and that can kind of be challenging when people are in different spots in life, but also just like where their heads are at is a little different, or their attitudes towards things are different. So like, how do you kind of work with all of the different kinds of people?
So when we have a group, we can't work with each person individually. So what I do is I try to get 2 people to help me. So we have a walking group, we have what I call the beginning joggers, and then I have what I call the returning runners. And you say, well, if someone's a runner, would they take this? Well, some people have been they've been away from running long enough where they feel like they're starting over, but they have a lot of the mindset, or they kind of have some of the mechanics down, and so they might want to be in the returning runner group, or they just have a good aerobic base, so they probably can quickly move back past the, say, 12-minute jogging group up to the 8 minutes, which would be a running group, right? So we have the 3 groups, and then that's the leader, raise their hand, and the group folks will fit into one of those 3 areas when we start. And then they can transition between any one of them if they later on they think, hey, this is too fast or too slow. But like we said, when we start out, every group is going for 20, maybe 30 seconds before they're walking. So it's pretty easy to tell kind of where you fit. But along with that too, you have, like you said, we had a gal who had bad knees, and then she's a walker, and with her, she used the ski poles, or you might even say just the hiking poles. And that was something that she did and enjoyed. She actually did it after her husband had died, so she was kind of a new widow. And it was a funny story with that too, because digressing a little bit, but when I'm thinking about it, I want to share it. Her husband had just died, and I think she had set this goal for herself as something that she wanted to accomplish. And after we get done with our run on Saturdays, we'd have about 20 minutes where I would give a lesson on something: shoes, tops, bottoms, chafing, socks, equipment, both. What do you say, the electronic or the IT equipment, versus the things that aren't powered, and then of course fuel and other things like that, water, hydration. So we'd have a talk on one of those subjects. But anyways, we're talking one day about chafing, and I said, some people use Glide, which almost looks like a deodorant that you can rub on your body, wherever you have chafing. and Vaseline. I have a buddy who uses that. And, he told me to put it between his butt cheeks. And I was like, that's way much more information I needed to know. But he is a ultra runner and has done a couple 100-milers. So I guess he's earned a right to at least share with me where he puts Vaseline. But I was saying one of the best secrets in terms of products to use for chafing is a product that's normally reserved for the bedroom. And at that point, she said, "Dang, I wish I hadn't given it all away." and, and of course, everybody laughed, and that was a great little moment of levity, right? Because I think it helped her, it kind of helped the group, and then I kind of thought, okay, she's going to be okay, she's mending, and I thought, sometimes when we're going through something that's heavy, challenging yourself with something as simple as, I say simple, but it can feel like a challenge. Challenging yourself with learning to run like a 5K really gets you out of that. Sometimes we stay in our head a little bit too much. We can have worry, and worry is really a form of meditation. It's just you're thinking about something bad all the time. It's like a little prison. So she challenged herself with that run and encouraged other people to do the same. And it gets you into having to think about something other than maybe the issues that are problems, and it introduces you to other people. You find people who have similar, kind of like-minded folks and activities, and it kind of opens you up to potential friends and other activities, and so it does more for you, a lot more for you than just tying your shoes and heading out the door.
Yeah, well, that kind of leads into my next question, maybe. So we kind of talked a little bit how I have the youth running program. So I'm working, pretty much exclusively with kids. And I feel like even though it's, running's not innate, but they come in and they're ready to learn. They're ready for you to help them change the way they move. They're ready for you to help them change their mindset, right? Like their brains are just ready for all of that. And I feel like adults, we're not always as much as it's like, yes, I do want to change. I do want to come here and learn to run, but it's like, I just don't think I can, or they get stuck in those negative cycles. And, what you were kind of just mentioning. So how do you help someone when they first, it's their first day at the group? Obviously you talked about the buddies and all those conversations, but what is the first step to getting somebody to believe in themselves that if I'm telling you, you can run these 15 seconds and then walk, what are you doing to help them?
Yeah. So the first thing I do is one of the things I do is I make it light. I make it fun, right? I don't make it they probably come there thinking, oh my gosh, the coach is going to have a whistle and he's going to be blowing it. And I'm, going to be slow. And the last one is going to be miserable. Right. So I keep it light, let them know that, we're going to have fun, that they're going to be able to do this without pain. And we're going to have fun together. I make a little fun of myself. I usually grab my belly and I'll say, look at me. And I'll pat my belly and I go, look, if I can run a 5K, anybody can run a 5K. And so things like that I think help put people at ease, because everybody is a little bit nervous. Just being in a new group's nervous, and now they're tackling something that they've never done before. So making it lighthearted, I think, helps folks to relax. And then I try not to put too much in their head about, I don't tell them anything about arm swing, none of that stuff, right? It's just, hey, let's just go outside, we're going to stretch and just remind them it's going to be easy. And then when we start, they know what's going to happen. I tell them the plan so it's not a surprise. I say, okay, listen, we're going to go for 20 minutes, but if we're taking the new jogger group, I say, we're going to jog for 20 seconds. And then we're going to walk for 2 minutes. And we're going to do that again. And when we jog, we're going to continue to carry on the conversation just like we are now. And they're kind of in a gaggle. And so they aren't quite sure what to think. But after a couple cycles, they get it pretty fast. And then they keep continuing to jabber about their vacation or whatever. And then you start to see people break into groups. And the environment allows them, I think, to make friends. It's not like they have to stay focused on me. So a lot of it is that mindset. I think a lot of it is preparing them for what's going to happen, so that they know, and then just reinforcing that they're going to be able to do this. And then we do the stretching in the beginning, and we talk about why we're doing that. And then, of course, when we're done, we do the stretching again, and just reinforce the value of it. And then we go into one of the training episodes, which I think just reinforces like, oh, I'm learning something. Hopefully they start to enjoy that. Oh, I learned something about shoes or socks or whatever. And then I'll talk to them about the training plan overall. We go in 4-week cycles in terms of we increase the first 3 weeks, and then the 4th week we drop back to week 1. We give our body a break, and then we start with week 5, picking up where we left off, and so they can kind of see the overall plan. I make a sheet for them for what they're going to do, run for that week. So the first run is the group run on Saturday. I think that's nice, and that kind of lets them know, one, as it helps to get them there because they know other people are going to be looking for them. It helps to reinforce that accountability. And then we do that run on Saturday together, which I think lets them know, yes, I did it, and it was easier than I thought it was, and it was successful. And then they have the plan for the weeks I just do 4 runs a week. So 1 on Saturday, rest Sunday, 1 on Monday, rest Tuesday, 1 on Thursday, and excuse me, it's Saturday's the first run, and then they run Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. And you can't quite give them a day rest in between each run because you end up not running on Saturday again. So since they're going to run on Saturday, and that's usually the day we increase it a little bit, they'll run on Wednesday and then again on Thursday to get Friday off. So they kind of have, I think, an overall plan. I think for some people that's important. And then usually people have individual questions, so I'll stick around to answer those. And a lot of them seem to be, it kind of depends. At the beginning, it might be about chafing or their tennis shoes. And then later on, as they're doing it, it might be something in particular that's bothering them. Or they just, they're starting to have these little epiphanies like, hey, if I run longer, at some point I'm going to need more water. Because when you run for 20 minutes, if you've hydrated before, you don't need to, carry a bunch of water with you. But as you go longer, some of those items you have to start thinking about. So make myself available when they're there. And then I try to remember everybody's first name. That's a big one too. I think just if you engage with your students by name, that's makes a big difference too. Or the next week you show up and you remember their name. I know that's kind of always a big thing for me. Like, wow, they actually remember my first name. So, and then I try to answer their questions, with specific answers, that fit them, vice just generic, broad statements. Sometimes the questions can be medical, like, hey, I think I'm getting shin splints, or I have stitches on my sides. Some of those I feel very comfortable answering, and others I'll say, I'm not a doctor, but here's my experience, and I can tell you what has worked for me or what I've seen my friends do. And those are the things that are coming to the top of my mind. I think they also like to know you're credentialed. I think that makes them feel like, okay, he knows what he's talking about. And then I haven't really done this, but just thinking maybe I should tell them a little bit about my own experience so they feel like, well, yeah, he just didn't get the piece of paper and came out here and taught. He's actually lived it. I've run on 48 different countries. That's the benefit of being a naval officer on a ship. And almost all the continents of the world, and then in 40 different countries. And when we would pull in, we would connect with a hash harrier running group. I don't know if you're familiar with them or not, but so the hash harriers, they were started by the British Army right around World War II, and of all places, yeah, Malaysia. Excuse me, Malaysia. And they're a running group, and they sing songs and tell jokes. And after like run number 7, you get a nickname, and a lot of their songs you can't sing to your grandma. But they have caught on and exploded around the world. And so that's a good thing people can do too. They can go like on Facebook and look for hash harrier runners in their hometown or their county, and there may be one, and they can join them to run with. But we would pull in and usually be able to find one of those groups, and even if we couldn't speak the same language, we could go for a run. And then usually what happens is they have what they call the rabbit, and the rabbit starts a run, and you usually sing a song to give the rabbit a 5-minute head start, and the rabbit has chalk, and the rabbit chalks where they go, and we have to chase the rabbit. And then usually the rabbit ends at a pub or a pizza parlor or something like that. And then everyone just, has a drink and eats pizza afterwards. And sometimes they like to say that they're drinkers with a running problem. Yeah. But again, just like anything, once you get into it, you start finding there's all these different facets to it. And it's really there's a lot of fun out there in running. I think at least people my age, I wonder if it's changed, for the kids going through high school now. But when we were going through high school, and I'll age myself here in the 80s, you had the run test, and I know my kids did too growing up, But they at some point it hit me. Nobody ever got any instruction on how to do that before the test. And so we all just dreaded it. I remember I ran too fast because I didn't know how to pace. And I burned out like halfway around the track. And then the struggle was not to be the last person, to finish. And of course, everybody was kind of embarrassed if they were, close to the end. And it was a lot of aerobic pain. And so it was miserable. And then a lot of coaches, I remember in football, if you made the coach upset, what did the coach say?
Go run.
Yeah, good, give me a lap, right? And so running was a punishment. And I thought, no other class in school, you would never show up at a math class having not taken calculus, and just starting that calculus, and your professor says, okay, in 2 weeks, we're going to have a calculus test, and then spend no time, teaching you the material before you actually went out and did it. But for some reason, at least where I was, that's what we did to everybody when it came time to run. I don't know if you have a similar experience growing up with running in school or not.
Like yes and no. So my parents were both runners. So it was kind of like we ran,
Yeah.
or at least I did. Actually, none of my siblings ran, but like we had it's like the mile in elementary school. So again, it's like once a year, twice a year. Okay, this date we're running the mile, and there's nothing leading up to it. But like I would train because that's what, we did. But yeah, I mean, it was like kind of the same thing. And, I know like I started my running club because I wanted there to be something better for, the kids growing up here. But there are so many like youth running programs around here now. And like non-competitive ones too, which is cool because I don't really need to be competing at, 8, 9, 10. Necessarily that might not be their goals and things like that. So, I think it is changing, and I think they are trying to get more instruction for kids for running, but you still will see like those t-shirts kids wear that like my sport is your sport's punishment. So like, they're still in that mindset of like, have you ever seen those?
No, that's so funny. I get it.
Yeah, so like, that's still a thing, but I think we're trying to make progress.
Well, I think what you're doing with those kids is awesome because I mean, I've seen with the adults is they do this 5K and at every level something seems like an amazing accomplishment. Before you've done a 5K, you're like 5K 3 miles, that's amazing. And then I remember I was telling you I was training for my marathon, and I did a marathon. I thought, oh, that's amazing. There was a guy who was training. He was our training group for our pacing group. He was our pace leader in the training, and his name was Jet. Jet. Oh, what was it? Ah, it was something the Jet. Now I'm forgetting his first name. I'll think of it. It'll come to me. But he disappeared for like a month, and he came back, and the front of his tennis shoe was cut off, and his big toe that was all black, and the toenail was gone. And I was like, Chet, what's going on? He goes, oh, I just finished. I was in Mexico. I was like, well, what were you doing? He's like, I was doing some Ironmans down there. And I said, oh, which one? And he said, oh, it was the double decker Ironman. And I said, double decker. I said, what was that? 2 Ironmans? He said, no, it was 20 double decker.
Oh
And
my gosh.
yeah, and it takes like a month to do the event. And his goal was just to be in the world record, to have accomplished more Ironmans in a year than anyone else. He didn't care if he was last. He just wanted to be able to say he finished more than anyone else in existence. And they didn't do one Ironman after another. They swam all 42 miles of the swim. Then they did all 1,200 and some miles of the bike. And then after that, they began all 500 and some miles of running, whatever it is. I probably don't got the figures right, but
Wow.
my point is, every time you think, you're like 5K is huge, wow, a marathon's huge, wow, and then you do it and you realize there's another level. And here was Chet the Jet doing 20 Ironmans in a row. But all of it, regardless, whether you're running a mile, a 5K, a marathon, beyond marathon into ultras, it just does so much when you meet that goal for your self-esteem. And so these kids that you're training, they're going to carry that with them their whole life. They probably don't even think of it that way, right? Oh, my self-esteem has grown. But it has, because they accomplished something and they just see in themselves, there was this goal, there's this thing we were going to do, and then at some point we went and we did it after some training, and they probably feel very good about passing the finish line, and then it just carries over into their life, into other areas about what they think they can accomplish or what they put their mind to. It also takes a little discipline, so there's all sorts of great things that are getting planted in those bodies and minds. So bravo to
Oh,
you.
well, thank you. Also, I feel like somehow we have chatted for a really long time and it doesn't feel like it. So we are running out of time. I know I just looked at the clock and I was like, oh my gosh, we're like gonna be a long episode here. But is there any last things you want to say really quickly? And then you have to tell us where to find your book, even though I'll have the links
Okay.
in there. But then also locally, where are you? Because I realize I actually don't know where you are. So if people want to find your group.
Yeah, so we're in Virginia, in Stafford, Virginia. So that's where we're physically located. We have the book, so it is on Amazon, and it hit #1 new release in like 8 categories. So we're hoping that a lot of people will just be able to do something that they never thought they could, and then just carries them on into the next thing in life. Um, but we also provide the training, and they don't have to be here in person, but we do it online as well. We have video lessons they can watch if they want to do it alone. We also do it where we do the coaching, and we can do it by Zoom, where we meet with people and they can ask their questions, and we have Q&A sessions, and we keep them on track each week. And of course, we can do it locally if they're here in the area. So the book is Running for the Rest of Us, and put that into Amazon. It should pop up. If not, you can put Dan Bryan, my name, and it'll pop up. And it has our website, which is www.mosaicconcepts.com. And Mosaic Concepts does more than running. It also does yoga and retreats and other things as well. That's probably the easiest. And we're on TikTok and all sorts of stuff. But if you go to the website, it'll open it up to the other places if people are interested.
Yeah, perfect. I'll make sure I know I have your website. So I'll make sure I have all the links and put it in there so people can find you. But Dan, this has been so fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So real quick, since you mentioned, I want to talk just for a sec about, we talked about, kids who are, like my son is autistic, so he's on the spectrum.
Right. We didn't get to this. Yes.
So what do you do for a kid who's autistic or on the spectrum? And I think for us and training our son to run, it was kind of the same we do with everyone else. I think starting early makes a big difference, because I think when they're young, this is just what our family does. I remember when I was little, I thought it rained all over the world when it rained where I was. And I remember we moved because of my dad's job every few years. And then when I was in third grade, I met someone who had been in Colorado, where we were living at that time, their whole life. What were they, all of 12 or something like that? And I was like, oh my gosh, you've never moved? I thought everybody moved. So I think when they're young, the good thing is, if you run, that's just what the family does. Oh, that's just part of what we do, and just make it fun. Kids, as you know, can't pace, so they'll burn themselves out in the first 30 seconds. So, you just got to learn to handle that piece. But it was handled a lot just the way we would handle it with someone who isn't on the spectrum at all. Now, that was kind of our experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's so great, because I think, especially as coaches, there's always, especially for kids sports, you fill out like any other information we need to know. And, parents often are going to put some diagnosis or something in there. And as a coach, you might be like, oh, what am I supposed to do with this kid? Right. So I love that you pointed out, like, you do the same thing, but maybe you have to do it a little slower. Maybe you have to explain it twice, or maybe you don't, right? Like, we're teaching kids, we're teaching people who are new at something. So this is just another person who's new at something.
That's a good point. I think, each person's a little different, right? So you're right. Some are on the spectrum, depending upon where they're at, you're going to have to go a little slower, or you just realize you're going to just keep reinforcing it, and eventually it's going to stick, or they're just going to learn, maybe not by so much what you say, but just what everybody else is doing, and they just stick in the pack. But they'll get it. And I do think it is good to know if your students are on the spectrum. I know our son is high functioning, so he's quite intelligent, but he's reluctant at times to tell people. And it actually works out much better for him if people know, because if they don't, they often think he's being rude when he talks to them, or kind of stiff-handed, a talk to the hand. But because the replies are very factual and matter of fact and direct. But once they know, it's kind of like, oh, I get it. I've got the framework for this now. He's not just being rude to me. And I think that helps. So I would say my thought is that there's no reason to hide that, share it, and it helps everybody involved in the training, from the parent to the instructor to the student. I think it just gives a better framework, and then you're able to provide a better experience for them, and they're able to enjoy it more.
Yeah, well, thank you for remembering that we were supposed to talk about that, because obviously I got caught up just hearing about your running group and all of that stuff. So I completely forgot that that's what we had decided we were going to talk about when we first met. So thank you for that. And well, now I guess anything else that I missed now before we get off?
No, I could keep, I keep chatting your ear off forever. I really have enjoyed it. It's been really fun. I really like the way you did this too, which was just start the conversation and see where it goes. So I'd be glad to come back at any time. If I can be of service somehow, just let me know. And great luck to you, the podcast, to your running, to the kids, to everything. Yeah, it's great. I saw you were working with kids, and I thought, well, yeah, those seeds that are being planted, man, everything from just self-esteem to work ethic to teamwork to even things like, you have to push through a little bit at times, perseverance, um, just your thought life, all those things come into play when you run. So, anyways,
Yeah.
great.
No, I always like to be able to talk with people who like understand like running is a metaphor for life. Like there's so much we can teach people in general through running. So, um, yeah, no, I have your contact information. So I'll obviously reach out to you when the episode drops so that if you want to give it a listen, you can. But I would love to have you back, and I'm sure we'll have other things to chat about. If I think of a more focused topic that I think you would like enjoy talking about, I can always reach out and see if we can set something up that way too.
Yeah. So um, we can talk about life lessons or life decisions that were made by running. You probably have a couple. I find real runners make some really important life decisions while running. It seems to be one of the best times when they can get alone and just think things through.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I feel like like people have like their shower thoughts or like, they make all their decisions in the shower. Nope, shower in and out, not thinking in the shower. It's I'm out on a run. Let me solve my
Yeah.
problems. Let me figure out which bills to pay. What is my son doing now? Like, yeah, and all the thoughts. I can't even think of like, my most recent epiphany, but yeah, you're always thinking when you're running.
So now we're going to go into episode two because I do as well speaking to last thing I do speaking as well to corporate organizations to their wellness department through their wellness departments I speak at corporate to companies and it's because and I've drunk enough of the Kool-Aid but it's true running is so fundamental or walking let's just say movement doesn't have to be running, but start with walking, is so fundamental to how we are made and designed that the benefits go far beyond physical. We all get that, our heart's going to get stronger, our bone density is going to increase, our muscles are going to grow, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. I read something a while ago that said up to 24% smarter by doing just a few short runs weekly. And so there's that movie, where the guy pops the pill, I think called Limitless, and he knows
Yeah.
instantly what to do. He solves all his problems in life. But I'm like, but that's fiction. But this is real life. And I'm not talking about running marathons. We're talking about a few short runs a week, and all of a sudden you're going to be able to think better. So what would you do with that in your job, your career, your relationships, your finances? And so it has physical benefits, it has mental benefits, it has emotional. There's all sorts of endorphin and emotional benefits, and it's just not surprising the way we're built. That movement is so fundamental to our health. And since sitting's kind of the new smoking, and and we have so much advantages with vehicles that in some ways, a lot of us just need to remember that walking will make a big difference in our life. And so getting people just to embrace that is one of my goals.
Well, I think, like you said, that might be our next episode. So let's put a pin in that because I
Okay.
think I think there's definitely something there. No, that sounds great, and I think we're probably 2 weeks out from this. But I'll let you know, and then yeah, we'll definitely be in touch to see what else we can come up with.
Great. All right.
All right, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Anytime.
All right, have a good one.
You too. Bye.
I just want to thank Dan again so much for not only the great conversation, and I realized it was a longer episode. Usually I warn you guys ahead of time that it's a little long, but oops, it was a little long, but definitely worth it. But I want to thank Dan again for coming on and talking to me and being so patient while I tried to get technology on my side and agreeing to come back and talk with me later this week. So super exciting to get to chat with him again. Oh my gosh, why can I not speak today? But yeah, so can't wait for that episode. Like I said in the beginning, please, please, please send me any messages if there's questions or things you want me to talk with him about because we're kind of just going to do more of a free-flowing episode and just kind of chit-chat about running and things like that. So we're open kind of to anything. With that, make sure you check out our fundraising site for the Youth Mental Health Project. When I say our, now I'm talking about me. My fundraising site for the Youth Mental Health Project, we are about 5 months out from our in-person and virtual event. It is our Run Fest. We are doing the 1-hour run challenge and a 5K. And for our in-person people, we will have some free kids movement activities. So definitely come check that out if you are local to me. It'll be May 20th in Malvern. If you are not local to me, we are doing it virtually as well. We will have a Strava challenge group, and I'll obviously be talking about it on the podcast. So super fun. Obviously goes to a good cause, the Youth Mental Health Project. It provides resources, education, and support for families that have a youth struggling with mental health. So really important. How can you say no? You don't want to support that, right? But yeah, so that is what we are doing. We also have, for people who are non-runners right now, there is a training plan on the American Run Club website just to help get anybody to be able to run walk for that hour so they can complete the hour challenge if they would like to do so. Yeah, so definitely check that stuff out. And thanks again.
Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe, all the things that you can do for a podcast that you enjoy listening to. Make sure you check out social media, our website, any of those things. If you have questions, comments, interview requests, feel free to email me at marickyrunclub@gmail.com.